So welcome to MindShifters Radio. Today is Tuesday, March the 3rd, 2026. We welcome you to the show. And then I said, hello, Terry and Anita and Melissa and Andrea, and welcome, Michael. So we're glad y'all are here.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted we get to do this another time. It's pretty awesome. Much, much, much appreciation for life, for breath, for the fact that we get to hang out together and move through whatever needs to be moved through. So delighted y'all are with us. Anyone have anything on your mind? Anything to share? Hit the me button. Say hello. What's happening? What's exciting? Or what's not exciting? What's up for you? Well, what's up for me is another level of tapping into and being taught by the breath, which is pretty awesome. I mentioned yesterday I've been doing more research on a physiological level on the breath. And the fact that what's called the vagus nerve, and the vagus means wandering, it goes all over the body. It basically runs everything to do with life functions that aren't locked into survival. And so the vagus nerve is really the nerve that runs the parasympathetic nervous system, which means rest, digestion, repair, blood production, reproduction, elimination. All those functions are run by or touched by the vagus nerve. And the when you look at the idea, and we've talked about it a few times, of cymatics, cymatics is the science of how sound impacts matter. And you've maybe seen a video on YouTube or something where they've got a drum with some sand on it or stones or something like that, and they blast the sound into it, and all of a sudden you're looking at these beautiful geometric shapes. They change the frequency of the sound, and you got a different set of beautiful geometric shapes. A different frequency, still a different set. And so, when you realize, or what I'm realizing more and more, the ancients said the power of life and death is in our words, and it's physiological. They were talking about physiology is what I'm getting on a new level, because the voice acts as a biological bridge between our goals, our perception, and our physiology. There's a thing called the recurrent laryngeal nerve, and spoken words literally create a somatic resonance that vibrates these muscles in the throat. And that when those muscles move and that voice box produces a frequency, then somatic resonance vibrates the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, the mechanical energy travels down that system, and it literally modulates the whole parasympathetic response. Heart rate, lungs, digestion, it's biophysical. So speech is not just communication. It's literally a regulatory tool that organizes cellular matter. And it literally dictates life or death. Because chronic sympathetic dominance, the sympathetic and parasympathetic are designed to be in a balance or a continuum. If everything is running well, there's a balance there. If there's danger, the sympathetic system is available for alert, but you don't want your structure and your mind and the systems in your mind set for alert all the time. You want them set on safety. And if they're set on safety, then the parasympathetic aspect of the autonomic nervous system operates well and keeps everything going, all of those functions going. But when we start to speak hostility and fear, we begin through cymatics, a sympathetic resonance in the vagus nerves that said, oh, time to shut down. And what happens when it shuts down is it literally, that's where people go into, but the way we generally hear about sympathetic dominance is the flight, fight, fright, fear, fawning response. When that response activates, what happens is the structure says, we need to get ready to run or fight or fawn in order to survive. And so what happens is blood is shunted away from the higher centers of the brain, from all of the organs in the body that are not survival oriented. Like, let's say, for instance, elimination. You know, if a bear is chasing you in the woods, you're not going to stop to have a bowel movement. Elimination's not going to, the energy, literally blood flow is shunted away from that function. You're not going to have to do a calculus problem. Blood flow is shunted away from the frontal lobes of the brain. You're not going to have to ovulate or produce sperm. Blood flow is shunted away from those functions. You know, if that bear catches you, it doesn't matter whether you digested the meal you had a half an hour ago. So blood flow is shunted away from digestion. People who live in that chronic state means their higher brain centers don't work, their reproduction doesn't work, their elimination doesn't work. You know, people are constipated and have trouble eliminating. Sweat doesn't work. You know, all these functions are shut down in order to survive. And fear, fright, flight, freeze, fawning are all responses to excessive hostility or fear or excessive stress. So looking to get that vagus nerve functioning out of words that are caring for self, caring for others, respectfully. You know, if I speak disrespectful words to others, if I scream and rage disrespectful words to others, then what happens? I'm putting it right into the vagus nerve. Power of life and death is in our words. So this biophysical resonance is the transmission of sound into literal physical structure. And so being aware of that, to me, just adds another whole piece to the puzzle. That through the frequencies created by our words, we're impacting and right into the voice box, right into the larynx, is this vagus nerve. And that provides, literally, innervates the muscles that allow you to speak. And then from there, the main trunk of this vagal nerve descends, vagus nerve, the vagal trunk, descends down into the heart, the lungs, and the digestive tract. Now, when this is all regulated by the presence of breath and active love, we have stable perception, we have clear cognition, we're integrated emotionally, expanded awareness. But when it's dysregulated, we're fragmented into the brain goes into what's called predictive threat modeling, hypervigilance, emotional reactivity, narrows perception. And, you know, it's an architecture that is functioning perfectly. I mean, if that bear's coming after you, you want that system to really function. But the minute that you've escaped the bear, you want that system offline and go back to parasympathetic balance. And so part and parcel of that is, what kind of words do we speak? What do we do with our words, and what do we do with our breath? You know, one of the pathways we could compare the parasympathetic and the sympathetic as one of them that's governed by the breath of life, Rukha, through Rachma, active love in the mind. It's where the breath is received, and we shift out of mechanical effort into a receptive state. The other set of the mind, and this is where Yeshua said Brahma was so important. There's Brahma and there's hostility or fear. When hostility or fear active, the mind is cycling into threat assessment. So allow yourself to make sure that you stay connected with your breath. Pay attention to your breath. Spend time with your breath. Allow your breath to lengthen and smooth within your body. In fact, let's do a short meditation on breath right now. And just let your jaw relax. I'm going to invite you to just breathe through your mouth at this moment. This breath tends to break up toxicity. And so as the toxicity is broken up and released, it releases through the breath. So just imagine your breath, or allow your breath to be connected, and let the inhale and the exhale flow as a unit, and allow them to just kind of be equal in their timing. But the in-breath is about the same as the out-breath. Now, we're not looking for effort here. Some breath techniques require, you have to do all this. We're not looking for effort. All we're looking for is a natural breath. So let the inhalation and the exhalation just flow evenly. And as they flow, you set a rhythm into your nervous system. It usually takes most people 15, 20, 25 minutes of this type of flowing breath before what I've referred to as the Dikucha factor. In Aramaic, the term for the breath that was designed for humans is Rukha. There are 3 breaths, if you remember. One is the breath that everything breathes, every animal, every creature, the chickens and the humans. The second is the breath that is taken in hostility and fear and dysregulates. The third one is a breath that's taken consciously, focused in your human life, in active present love. Bring your awareness just down through the center of your structure. Bring your breath down all the way to the pelvic floor. As you bring it back up, bring it up through the heart to the center of your head. And let your awareness rise gently along that center line until your awareness with your in-breath goes right up to the very crown. Imagine that your breath is right at the very top of your brain. And allow the breath to organize the state of your physiology. When it becomes practice, the Dikucha factor, the breath that transforms, the breath that moves from just, any old regular breathing to where it's consciously, purposely linked to love. When that Dikucha factor kicks in, when that activation kicks in, that's when the transmutation of lower energies happen. So just allow it to gently open. Subtle sense of opening. And paying attention to your body, just see if it wants to move at all. There are the 3 keys actually. 1 is breath, 2 is alignment, and 3 is willingness. So just listen to your structure, listen to your breath, and it will tell you if you should be moving at all or aligning. And when it comes to stillness, allow yourself to just rest in it. Just letting go of all effort. Allow the breath to teach you, to show you how to align yourself internally. Maybe just micro adjustments. Remember, in the Aramaic, the words the kingdom of heaven can be properly translated as the kingdom of expansion. Allow yourself to just expand throughout your structure. And remain in that connected space as breath and awareness move together. And just let coherence deepen naturally. 2,000 years ago, the Greeks tell us that Yeshua breathed on the disciples and they received the Holy Spirit. No, he breathed with them the breath of Rukha, a conscious breath connected to love, and invited them to entrain with him so that they received that breath. And not in the sense of being given something, but they entrained with his breath. And that breath, consciously taken in love, is what stabilizes coherent energies and opens the gateway to higher connectedness. Times as you step into that process, there's a profound silence. Reduced personal identity. A sense perhaps of being breathed. Deeper stabilization of your whole structure, your physiology, your mind, your emotions, your nervous system. As deliberate as resistance goes. What's the opposite of willingness? Resistance. In Aramaic, that term is Satan. Most people stand in Satan most of their lives in resistance to what's happening in their worlds. Just allow your breath to deliver a deeper stabilization and letting loose of the resistance. And this is one of the things that allows the Dakucha factor to kick in. Chronic fear conditioning, hostility conditioning, keep sympathetic bias dominant, amygdala scanning active. The mind goes into a state called predictive loops. Whatever, it's trying to tell from pattern. One of the main things of the human mind is predicting patterns. And so these predictive loops, once fear or hostility is activated, begin cycling and brain waves are fragmented. Most of the intelligence that's there is set in the arena of threat assessment, looking for, what's going to go wrong here? What do I need to protect myself from? Looking to move to the breath that inspires safety rather than threat assessment. Letting go of hypervigilance. And allowing alignment. And the idea of entering into this as a practice is that you will achieve new baseline states where that predictive loop and that threat assessment drops away. And the mind is looking for patterns that are based in active present love, things that match what the breath is delivering. So let's just take a few breaths together. And notice if you watch with your inner eye or your inner sense, it may not be an actual visual thing. Then again, for some people it is. Imagine as that Dakucha factor becomes more deeply embedded, more natural to you. That the light in each cell of your structure expands. The light of your being takes over the resonance in each cell in your structure, and that coherent light sets up a frequency of safety, of protection. And as you engage in this as a practice, one of the things that happens is that the energy of the we've talked to about in Aramaic as sin, which simply means energies that are off the mark, begin to dissolve. You become, quote unquote, sinless, free of the influence of any form of incoherent energy. And in that state, the breath will show you. I can't tell you how. I can tell you it's there from experience, but I can't tell you how, but your breath will instruct you if you allow it to, of just how to bring yourself into coherence and bring yourself into alignment that uplinks you to a higher intelligence, a higher mind that in the ancient teachings was called the mind of Christ. We have the mind of man, or carbon-based memory, which is AI, which is literally just according to the goals it's given, producing realities, producing output, producing advice, behavior, prompts, feelings, etc., all based on the goals that are set and the content that's resonated out of the past in carbon-based memory. That's the mind of man. We want to make a space for a new mind. And that new mind is the mind that you are destined to live in, that you are designed to live in, and that is the mind of conscious, active, present love. It is your birthright to live there. As the breath brings in more and more coherence into alignment and coherence, feel the nervous system just softening and letting go. Predictive loops drop. Threat assessment gone. Your nervous system says, I'm in safety. I don't have to carry around these old threats as unresolved dynamics in my own mind. And if those threats come up, I can maintain this state of coherence and simply breathe through, dissolving, forgiving, removing that threat energy. Few people in today's world will actually face bear or any threat similar to that. And yet, if the mind, because of unresolved, especially generational patterns or childhood patterns, holds that we have to keep on high alert just in case, living in sympathetic dominance grinds down life. It leads to early death. Yes, it preserves life if the bear is there. No question, it's a wonderful system. But if the bear isn't there and you're in sympathetic dominance, you're in trouble. It's the time to breathe and just turn that trouble over to the breath. And as you do that, remember, in fact, imagine, physics is theorizing there's no such thing as time. So let's imagine that You allow your breath right now to transport you back 2,000 years ago. You're sitting on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Safe and secure. You're listening to a man who's saying wondrous things, not me, but the man Yeshua, that you're actually there, breathing with him 2,000 years ago, being breathed and in training with his breath and his words. And in our culture, we've translated the word prayer as, putting over into the cosmic gift catalog, telling God what God should be doing for us. Let's go back and listen to him talk about prayer. In that Aramaic language, the word prayer is to set a trap for love, for God, to become the aligned space where breath delivers the active presence of love to every cell in your physiology, sets you into parasympathetic balance, where every cell in the structure receives the light, the breath, and the energetic instructions that it needs to live in vibrancy and life. The disciples 2,000 years ago did not ask Yeshua to say a prayer for them. He didn't say a prayer. There's no such thing as the Lord's Prayer as something you should recite and recite. Try to remember, he said, don't recite and recite like the pagans who want to be heard for their much speaking. What did he say? Take a breath. Go into the closet. Go into your inner chamber. Close the door. And then the Creator, who hears you in silence, will shift your whole physiological system into delight and wonderment that was in its original design. Imagine you're sitting there actually listening to his voice as he gives you this instruction set. Not a prayer, but instructions on how to become the space, how to become aligned with that which captures the active presence of love in which you live, move, and have your being, and reflects that into the world. So he starts with the word abun, which is Papa, Daddy, intimate greeting, Father, eternal Creator, parent to us all, who art in the realms of the unmanifest. Teach us to honor and emulate your love through our physiology by bringing that love into the world. Teach us to capture that presence of love that you are, align with it fully so that it flows through us and fuels us perfectly. When we speak words of you, let us speak from that space of love, honoring that presence and that breath that you gave us that delivers life and intelligence to our very clay bodies. In our creation that have been degraded by our not knowing is still with us. We invite you, we ask you to open the awareness of that to us. Allow that realm which you designed to express here on earth to express through me. Let it be done through me here on earth, as you have already created it in the unmanifest realms. That you nurture us daily with that one thing that we need daily. It's interesting that the Greeks translated it as bread. But you know, you can go days, weeks, months without bread. We don't need daily bread. What do we need daily? What is it that we can't live without on a daily basis? Breath. That you give us this breath on an ongoing basis. And that with that breath, you bring in the correction that undoes, forgives any incoherent energies that we allow the breath to access within our physiology. And I take that breath now fully, freely through every cell of my structure to dissolve all forms of hostility or fear in me. And I commit to forgiving in me anything that's resonated by any brother or sister, so that I really truly honor the gifts you give rather than the things that my generations have done to themselves and passed on to me. That I forgive as to those things. If I'm tempted to fall into any form of hostility, fear, greed, grief, loss, sadness, hatred, vengeance, that your love remains present. I may lose awareness of it, but that your love remains present is such a blessing and such a gift. And when I remember to connect to your breath in me, I allow it to flow throughout every cell of my structure. To deliver from the temptations of my own mind and empower the breath of forgiveness to dissolve those energetic patterns that never belonged in a system that was designed for love is such a blessing and such a gift. And I breathe. I realize that my functioning purpose as a human being is to embrace that which you hold in the unmanifest realm. The bringing about of the community of beings connected to love and connected to each other. And I breathe consciously, purposely, the breath of Rukha, the coherent breath, which brings everything in me into alignment with your presence and leaves the hum, leaves the sweetness of that presence in every cell of my structure, displacing, forgiving any energy that I have honored in the past that does not belong in me. Remember, you are the light of the world. And breathe back up into this space of awareness. And how's everybody doing?
Andrea asked in the chat room, can you speak about functional freeze? And she's got.
Go for it, Andrea.
Well, I'd love to say that was so connecting, that guided meditation. really brought me into a deep space of like bliss.
Joining you in it.
Oh, bliss and love. And I feel so reminded right now. And actually what came to me that I had forgotten about, I had this meditation journey that was really intense. And I was being taught how the breath worked with my thoughts that showed itself as a torus field. And
Right.
every inhale, it would show a thought that, like a common thought that I would have based in fear. And as I would breathe out, it would show it showing up in this holographic torus field, and how every breath that I was taking, they were short breaths, how it was creating this holographic type reality that was showing me what that thought looks like in creation and imagery. I'm actually shifting my language from making reality to creating it,
Yes,
because creating it is creating it in love with source, and making it is the carbon base.
exactly. The things we
So,
make fall apart.
yeah.
Creation is eternal.
So in this journey, it was showing me with the shallow breaths and the I'll just call it distorted thoughts that I was creating, or carbon-based thoughts, and then how it would show up in this holographic space in my mind. And then I didn't know it was in my mind. You've taught me that. And then it turned into where my torus field was expanding in love, and this beautiful natural unfolding. And then it turned into the connection that I have with the earth, and being at one with humanity and that torus field, and then going all the way out into, I remember in the journey feeling completely ripped apart and really afraid. And I remember saying, I'm never going to come back from this. I think I might die, because with the torus field being so big and feeling pulled in and out, and really what it was doing was dissolving the ego, but it does feel like dying. And so it reminded me of that um, experience, how when if we're speaking of it in a torus field with the breath, it's all this grand orchestration, and how I was so surrendered. And the because it was in that time when I was meditating constantly, and how when I'm in that full surrender and that state of love, there isn't the bracing and resistance and all these rapid thoughts, where my breath was just like you say, breathing me. And I
It's the
was,
intelligence. It's direct intelligence from the creator that's given to us. It's like, it's magnificent.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that really connected me back to that, because I remember even walking
Mm.
aware of what was happening. Cars were driving by, and there was just no separation. Like, it's all this beautiful orchestration, and how holding that space made everything like sparkle.
As you're
And
tapping into that and saying it, everything in my body is just going into this amazing tingle. Like my whole structure is just going. "Meow." So thank you for sending it back.
yeah, that was so beautiful. And I got to connect to that in the hot tub the other day. I was meditating and I opened my eyes, and these things are back that used to be there. They're dancing pinpoints of what look like sparkles, and they're everywhere. And things are starting to look a little more holographic at times, like I'm tapping back into, or I'm not tapping back into it. I'm becoming more in alignment with it. So yeah, thank you for
That's
that.
that's definitely a major key, is that alignment.
Hmm.
And all it takes, usually, at least for me, to get the Takucha factor to kick in, it takes a little bit of effort into the breath, but then once it goes, it happens with just the tiniest little influx and outflow of breath. It's just, and the taste of it is like the sweetest fruit. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I love all the language that you're bringing to it for, a way to connect to it, to activate it, to remember. So thank you. That was such a beautiful guided meditation.
Delighted.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had said in the chat, what you were explaining prior to the meditation was I could see a reference to your visual with fear and hostility and love in the visual you have in a head. And explaining that, like having a visual with the vagus nerve and speech and, some kind of diagram explaining what you just had would be like an incredible symbology to remember.
Yeah, we do have that diagram of the head. We'll maybe integrate the larynx in there with the vagus nerve just to show how it connects. It's anatomically, it's not something that anatomy when I went to medical school was not my thing,
Mm,
but just I'm coming into a new awareness of it with the research I'm doing to do this, to get the book, it's all Greek to me, to be able to show not only from the what's considered to be the religious or the theological perspective, but physiological. So it's all just physiology. It's all how it works. And so it's taking me into a new interest and a new depth, and realizing that the vagus nerve, literally, like there's zero space between the larynx and the vagus nerve. And
mm,
it's the whole rest, digest, regenerate, heal, and function.
mhm,
So it's like just a new awareness for me. And then when you realize the blood flow aspect of it, that when sympathetic dominance comes in, it literally is like draining the blood out of all of the non-survival functions. If you don't need it to fight or run,
mhm,
it's cut off from blood. And of course, so many people live in that state constantly that once it's cut off and the energy is not restored there quickly, then what tends to happen physiologically, blood tends to coagulate, it tends to solidify, it tends to line the arteries and just, you know, um, create restriction. So allowing the nerve flow to open back up and be resupplied, the
mhm,
blood flow to be strengthened is just monumental.
mhm. Yeah, and actually that validates through your language the way that I've been really consciously all day, just when I want to brace, I brace in my abdomen area and
Mm-hmm.
experience hypertension. And I've really been just like, even when something feels a little intense and I just close my eyes and focus on keeping my breath going, and that hypertension that I was experiencing hasn't been present for a couple of weeks. Just by
Nice.
focusing on keeping that full breath, like all the way down into the pelvic bowl, and
Yep.
allowing it to come out, even when I'm super shaky. Um, and I am just like thrilled at the healing that's coming to my abdomen area that was
Yeah, that's
experiencing that
monumental.
tension. Hmm.
Monumental.
Yeah.
Delighted for you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
all
you
your
for
words.
delivering. Thank you for delivering that to the world.
Mhm. Yeah,
and
and I would
breathing with you.
thank you. And I would also love if you can talk a little bit about functional freeze.
Well, my take would be like one of the things that happens when we go into that sympathetic dominance is literally the blood flow to the frontal lobes of the brain it shuts down. The blood vessels constrict, vasodilation, and the blood flow stops. So that part of the brain is reduced in functioning. So we're not going to get intelligent, reasoning processes in that state because that part of the brain just isn't working. Though we can function, you can move, you can, make some survival type decisions because they're structured in carbon-based memory already, but a higher true cortical function or the vehicle for being to express is through that frontal cortex, which, we're the only creature that has one that's developed in that way. Maybe that and maybe some of the whales and dolphins, but so who knows when we get the communication barrier broke down, what's going to happen there. So basically the functional freeze would be we're shut out of higher function and all we've got left is whatever the survival uh, dynamics are in carbon-based memory, just pure reactive mind. So choice isn't available. It's just bang, whatever's in there is going to tend to run the system. Does that fit for what you're experiencing or have experienced and are looking for?
Yeah, I think it taps in more to because I'm recognizing that for a large part of my life, it shows up in romantic relationships with a beloved, and I notice how I autopilot into functional freeze because of what comes up in me and haven't known how to face it. I was always fighting it, and then my go-to that I lived in as a child is functional freeze. So I'm trying to understand it better to recognize when that moves in for me.
Yeah, well, one of the first signs that will show you that you're going there is going to be the holding of the breath. Because it's the frontal lobes of the brain are the instrument through which the intelligence of the breath operates. The intelligence doesn't reside there. So it's a form of dissociation when one goes into that functional freeze. The nervous system is in low-level survival mode. The vagal tone is gone, and it shuts down. Although one can, continue to do tasks, but it's not a full freeze where somebody becomes totally catatonic. It's like the wound has taken over, but it's mechanically done. It's emotionally numb, mentally foggy, and usually is a state of exhaustion or easy exhaustion. There isn't much energy there. So the threats there can't escape, but one forces oneself to keep moving. So the biological sympathetic dominant state, fight, flight, freeze, that's revved up. And at the same time, parasympathetic has slammed on the brakes. So it's kind of like running on empty, running on the internal fumes of whatever's programmed into the structure. Kind of checked out.
Yeah, I can see how that way of performance was there for me, and how the sensations, like the emotions that were intense for me, would fuel my movement as a way of moving it through my body, like excessive working out and even just staying super busy, which you've talked a lot to.
Avoidance.
Yeah. So that really
And in
fit.
that state, even the slightest decision can feel like overwhelm,
Yeah.
isolation. You know, you might mechanically go through the motions of greeting, connecting with other people, but the connection really, the mind isn't available to be a vehicle for that full energetic connection.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very fitting. Thank you.
And once, demanded required tasks are done, collapse usually happens. And that's the tension is, it's all tied in with the neck, the jaw, the shoulders. And, it's the body's programmed to brace for the attack that may not even be there. I mean, it can be something as simple as, one word spoken that resonates an old file where there is a trauma stored. And when that file starts to move because of the file folder effect, all of this unfolds, even though there's no threat actually present. So it's a protection. It's a survival strategy. The body's decided that the safest way to endure the environment is to become numb to internal experience so that you can mechanically function. And of course, if you realize that there's no actual external threat, there may be the circumstance where threat was present or carried out, attack or injury may have happened. But, to stop rather than trying to push yourself through it, that's the place to signal to your own structure. That's the place to stop, take a breath, fold your hands, and reconnect to the presence of love. Letting your body know that, okay, we don't have to push through this. We can just breathe, notice the physical sensations. If your mind has associated them previously with pain, this would be the place to bring the piece of the quantum still point training where you notice that this is a sensation and you let go of the need to categorize it or label it as pain, and you begin to observe it and label it as a sensation, letting go of the judgment that can take a sensation and turn it into a huge, literally debilitating pain. And so to work back to where, here's an energy. I don't like it, but here's an energy moving in my body. I can be with this. I can tap into it, and that can be a place where just doing some moving, walking. One of the unconscious things you'll see a lot of people doing. In fact, I've seen you do it, and many people do, is just we'll go into a rocking motion. That's a way of self-soothing and trying to re-engage the body. And then, of course, having a community with which you can co-regulate. Someone you can trust to help to do the reset of your nervous system. So good question. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts at this moment?
No, that helped really draw a lot of that experience together for me. Thank you.
Honored, delighted. In joining you and being able to soften whenever that's triggered, to tap into the mind energy that's involved, and to be able to, where when certain brain cells are structured, the mind generates a construct. And of course, we've probably none of us have ever had anybody do this to us, but when someone is in that state, all of a sudden they start telling you about something that isn't true about you. They start telling you about things that never happened, because in their perceptual construct, those things did happen, even though there's no actuality to it. But if the brain cells are triggered and the mind can't tell the difference between a real and imagined experience on its own, it takes an awake, aware being. So that's the place to plug into the forgiveness process. And, even, again, the mind can't tell the difference between a real and imagined experience. That can be a place to stop, take a breath, and who is someone that, just in imagination, that you can co-regulate with, that you can tap into their energy, and the resonance with them activates and brings different brain cells into activity until you can override the emotional impetus that keeps those old traumas going. And then, of course, apply the forgiveness tool to delete them. So joining you in achieving that state and kind of taming your own nervous system, really getting your nervous system back into harmony with the truth of your breath, the intelligence that the breath delivers, and the being that you are. Letting go of the past.
One
Done.
more thing. Oh,
Go for it.
one more thing that I remembered in the meditation that you were guiding was that simultaneous experience where, holding this presence and full presence is love. It's like another word for it. And that there would be, this chatter playing on in the background and things surfacing. But it was so quiet that there wasn't an attachment to it. And that simultaneous experience, because the predominant experience was existing as love, that was naturally in that deep surrendered state collapsing. Like it could just bubble when it needed to, but it was quiet. And it was almost like the carbon base was playing in the background to be met in that presence of love, and also without attachment or separation. It was all allowed to just be present in the moment, but the predominant experience of being love just made it like that radio playing in the background that you're not listening to.
Right. And ultimately, as we keep allowing the breath to go deeper and deeper, I mean, it's like ultimately what we want to do with that is get into that Rukha to Kuja breath, get that Kuja factor going, and metaphorically allow that breath to reach right down to the tips of your genetic toes, like to the deepest parts of the structure, because when it goes there, its presence dissolves everything that doesn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it just automatically, once that Kuja factor kicks in, once the flow of presence and breath is at a higher level than the resistance, then everything that composes the resistance begins dissolution.
Mm-hmm.
And that's forgiveness. It's the dissolution of those. In the worksheet process, you'll notice you're reminded several times to breathe, but in the worksheet process, it's a tool for opening the space for forgiveness to occur. The forgiveness doesn't occur when I cancel the goal. The forgiveness occurs when I cancel the goal, allow the perception to collapse, and deliver the next breath that dissolves what doesn't belong. what never belonged in any family system or anybody's life. And then with that breath comes the level of compassion that we can extend that to others, no matter how crazy the behavior may appear. So breathing with you. Anyone else have a thought for us before we call it a day? Well, deep appreciation for everybody. Have a blessed one. Bye-bye.